Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel here. I'm giving you a brand new video for you guys. For the last 49 years, Star Wars saga has remained one of the most influential fantasy and sci-fi series out there. And essentially this video is very much a love letter to Star Wars. On how and why personally of my story here and how I became a fan, why I became a fan, what scared me off, what pulled me back, and everything. And this is just my personal heart on my sleeve. Here it is for Star Wars. And basically, first and foremost, for me, it was like growing up as a millennial. At the time which I was born and everything, as a millennial, someone was born in 91, as 94. I pretty much grew up with being shown the original trilogy because my dad also loved Star Wars as well. He loved Star Wars, he loved Star Trek, he loved Doctor Who, and other iconic sci-fi works at the time and everything. And Blade Runner was still remains his favorite movie of all time. And basically at the time for me, of course, within that time frame, I was shown the original trilogy as well as the prequels coming out at the same time. I probably would have been I was barely even I was probably 4 years old when The Phantom Menace came out. And basically my fascination, I grew with the franchise ever since. And it grew, it was everything, it blossomed into this giant tapestry of this big, ubiquitous franchise. And in truth, it's given us some true highlights of its own. There's various games among them that have stood the test of time and still remain some of the very best of their own. Some of them remain as they have exceptional movies. Movies like The Empire Strikes Back, such as the first two, which remain as some of the most influential movies of the original trilogy, or so remains as some of the most influential of all time cinema, and some of the best video games of all time, i.e. Knights of the Republic, which any site will pretty much have this among the top 50 greatest video games of all time. You have exceptional other video games like Bounty Hunter and The Force Unleashed, which I also have as a paperback comic, which is awesome. I don't hate the sequel as much as everyone else does, but it's not as bad. But also the EU-based books that were released around the same time out in the 90s and 2000s of the same era. So, and many have claimed them to be some of the best, including such as the Thrawn trilogy, the Heir to the Empires, which many fans do consider to be the true sequel trilogy of the franchise. And for me, my personal big growth of Star Wars wasn't just of the movies, but it wasn't just that of the time as well. For me, I remember being a kid at school and getting that. I don't know if anyone is remembering of this, the old scholastic orders that we would get, and we can order books and stuff like that in advance. I remember seeing one of the Jedi Apprentice books or one of the Jedi Quest books when I was a quick kid. I think it was one of the Apprentice because it had Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan escaping out of a jail cell on the cover art, which was really cool. And that just grabbed my attention, and I was like, oh, cool. And I decided to order that, but then I realized I was a part of a series, and then I checked into my school library at the time, and I still have those books. They're 23 years past overdue. Yeah, that was my first induction into Star Wars, and then of that, in truth, I fell into that from that point on and forward. From that, I played Lego Star Wars, which at the time I remember having a plethora of playing it. It wasn't just of the movies themselves or what Disney nowadays just been pumping out, regardless of quantity or quality or whatever it may be. Don't get me wrong, you will get something good, i.e. a Jedi Fallen Order, or Mandalorian Season 1 and 2, or Andor, which is freaking great. Easily one of the best science fiction shows of the 2020 so far. But I find the hits to be far more inconsistent and incoherent, and far too in between from what they are or what they could have been in comparison to the old EU material. And it's because of this old EU material that I kind of grew up with at that time. Because at the time when I was younger, I read the Jedi Apprentice books. I read the Jedi Apprentice books, for the record, are like pre-Phantom Menace. They focus on Qui-Gon and young, early teenage years, Kenobi, and going on their journeys and everything. That was all really fun and everything. And then you get the Jedi Quest books, which focused from episode 1, in between episode 1 and 2, which focused on Kenobi and Skywalker, Anakin and Obi-Wan's growth as their own dynamicism. So that kind of fills the gaps in between episode 1 and 2. But it wasn't just that for me. It was playing rigorous hours of Republic Commando and getting my ass handed to me by those damn droids, or being lost in the large vacuous world of playing Knights of the Republic 1 and 2. The first one is fairly better, but 2 should be applauded for what it did. As well for me as playing Lego Star Wars. I remember as a kid, I would avidly go to Victoria Island, where I would go to my grandma's apartment there, because she had her own apartment there as well as one here in Burnaby. And I would go over there, and I would bring my Wii system, and then I would play Lego Star Wars there. And my parents were just like, "You little maniac! Why'd you bring that with you?" But it wasn't this. But it was that. That was my birth into Star Wars. And then, I was more into Star Wars at the time than I was of other franchises, i.e. Pokemon, Final Fantasy, whatever it may have been at the 2000s era. At the time there was a bunch of other fantastical franchises that were big at that time as well. And I always knew they were, Final Fantasy, Pokemon. I liked Resident Evil. I liked I really enjoyed Resident Evil. Harry Potter was great. The Lord of the Rings still remain my favorite movies ever, but it was Star Wars that was still my primary love at the time, as well as exploring other things reading Marvel and DC comics and seeing their movies and shows at that time and everything. Like the Justice League animated show still stands as one of my favorite shows of all time, as well as Batman being one of the best and Superman being pretty damn good. But I know this video feels like it's just my own knowledge vomit words coming through, but it shows to me it wasn't just a mainstream success of what they were showing at the time. And sure, what the EU was doing with a material like this wasn't necessarily fixing the wrongs, but they were making the quintessential sins of the prequels at the time tolerable through the movies, from the movies into other tangential material. They were trying to justify it. They weren't. I'll change my tone there. They weren't trying to justify it. They were trying to say, "Oh, this may not be being great in the movie here, so we'll expand it off into a story and make it tolerable through that." And because of this, for me, another one I grew up with playing was Star Wars Episode 1 Racer on the Nintendo 64. And good lord, was that a fun game. I really have great memories of that. But it wasn't just because of that. It was me coming through, and then I remember getting The Force Unleashed as a video game in 2008 or 9, and it being blown away by that. And then in recent years of the last 2020s, I replayed Knights of the Republic again, and that game still hits. It's excellent. I mean, this gameplay is a bit crooked, but it's still excellent. And same thing with Republic Commando and other video games I loved. And the original Battlefront, I need to bring that up. And oh my gosh, the Jedi Knights Academy games where you played Kyle Katarn. Oh, those games were so good. They were so damn fun. And for me, it was just exploring that. And then, I would go on YouTube and I want to watch Star Wars and material, fan films and stuff like that. And people making their own videos and like that on Star Wars and everything. And then for me, in early to mid 2010s, they canceled the ODU, and then they were like, okay, they were going to continue with Star Wars, but with EA and Disney. And for many of us, we were like, okay, this is weird, but we're willing to go with it. And it's also because of that, the franchise felt like it was, excuse me, underneath a certain umbrella, and because of that, it felt like it was just not willing to take as many risks or as much of a chance in the swing, especially for something that was so big and expensive at that time. The Force Awakens, in my opinion, as well as the sequel trilogy, in my view, just being, well, in my view, the less said about the sequel trilogy, the better. And movies, in my view, today, can't just get away with, oh, they're doing it practical and everything. You can't just pull the wool over my head like that. You can't just say, oh, it's real and practical, unlike Attack of the Clones or whatever, because it's not about that. It's about the right kind of execution. It's not about what things are practical or not, or they want proper representation of things, or proper, all these self-entitled words that come out today and everything, like woke or anti-SJW or things like that. I'm sorry to say, that was never really a thing. It was just people wanted greater representation of what they saw to be the best in Star Wars in the first place, and we just wanted better writing and craft and execution. And there was such a holdback of wanting that to be something else, but it felt like EA and Disney at the time were just playing it so damn safe, or non-willing to take something so exploratively out there and everything. That explains something like Star Wars 1313, if anyone here remembers that game not being ever made, although the trailer still remains here on YouTube, or how The Force Awakens was just nothing but a soft reboot. It may have been a fun movie for most, and to an extent I agree and disagree at the same time. I agree and disagree at the same time at that. But it was also like, okay, because the more I look at The Force Awakens and everything, I mean, for me personally, it's like, it's been some time. It's been like 3-4 years since I watched the sequel trilogy. And frankly, I'm kind of fine with that. I'm comfortable not even watching any of the movies of Disney's era ever again. The sequel trilogy was a massive letdown. When rewatching them back in 2022 or 2023, back when Mandalorian Season 2 came out, for me, I watched them then, and man, oh man, was I, it was just like, okay, this is just terrible. It's just, what the hell are they doing here? The Force Awakens was just a rehash. The Last Jedi basically exposited, or basically wanted to do what the director's main means, or was basically what the director's random whims of what he wanted, rather than what was more meaningful for the upholding narrative. And Return of Skywalker basically played like a terrible video game movie. I have very little to say about those movies. Solo is forgettable. Rogue One, I wouldn't say it's awful, because the last 40 minutes of it are excellent. But it's kind of a lot like Avengers Endgame, although I do think there's a bit of a quality jump in that, because I do think Avengers Endgame is better than Rogue One. But it's kind of like the last 30 to 45 minutes are great. The first bit of that needs an entire rewrite. And basically, in my view, exemplified a lot of the problems that we were seeing from the medium of this. But also at the time of the mid 2010s here on YouTube, I saw videos from Star Wars Theory, Star Wars Explained, Eckhart's Ladder, the Council Forecast videos, aka known as Stuff Analysis Channel, which is still going strong today. challenge like that just intrigued me with these what if videos. Like, what if Anakin survived? Or who would win, Luke Skywalker versus Anakin Skywalker, depending on the times and state of mind, the character and everything. That's what made me interested in Star Wars again. And it's because of talents like theirs that I want to give a personal massive shout out to them, even though they have far more of a legacy here on YouTube than I ever will. As for me, I know I'm small, I'm quaint, and I make no difference, but I'm just here exemplifying my love for the franchise and how I got introduced to it and how and why my heart beats for this franchise. Because I'm not just an ordinary fan. I really am not. I follow this franchise deeply, intelligently, and constructively. I've seen it for what it is, and I've seen it as very best and very worst. And even with the already used miscounts like Truce of Bakura or Revan or The Force Unleashed 2, whatever it may be, at least you saw the craft, potential, and what those were trying to tell us stories, rather than Disney. And I'm not saying anyone here cannot have an opinion here that's different than mine. That's totally fine or whatever. You join whatever you want, that's fine. Just don't at me when you're trying to debate between The Last Jedi versus The Empire Strikes Back. Which one is better? Because, in my view, there is no argument. You're talking about the worst of the franchise compared to the best. Like, you cannot tell me, like The Last Jedi itself, I can make a video on that over 4 hours long. And just talking about how frustrating, discombobulated, inconsistent, incoherence, and all the flaws with that movie in of itself. Like, there is no fucking justifying writing Luke Skywalker evolving past the Return of the Jedi time frame and then jumping to like 20, 30 years later in The Last Jedi, and he's like, yes, I am a Jedi Master, but I failed at everything of this. He didn't see the fact his own friggin' nephew of having dark side tendencies, and how he himself didn't just go, what was with him? Let me just talk to him. No. Don't do that. There's Ben Solo in his cot, in his hut, on his own bed, in his own hut, and the thought of him igniting his lightsaber and wanting to kill him. That is not Luke. Like, what horseshit. I'm sorry. Like no. That's not Luke. And I'm gonna be spend some time by my own mission here on this video. It's been some time since I've seen the sequel trilogy, but overall, I almost don't want to revisit anything on Star Wars anymore. I mean, I'm taking here's the thing. I will take my dad to see The Mandalorian and Grogu, because we both really enjoyed that show. But I haven't seen Star Wars wise of anything based of it. Well, I saw Mandalorian. Last time I really watched a show before last year. Last time I really watched anything of Star Wars of note was of Mandalorian season 2, and then I didn't pick up anything Disney Star Wars based until last year July, when I finally watched Star Wars Andor season 1 and 2 back to back. And personally, I'm willing to just pick it all up and take my expanded universe love and go home with that. And basically, to pull a unique little story of its very own, I'm pulling a Jedi Master Cook. I'm going to my own personal hibernation when it comes to Star Wars. I'm taking what I love with it. I'm turning my back on Disney forever. And excuse me, Mandalorian and Grogu will be the last thing I do. But I mean, if anyone asks me my opinion on TCW is so overrated. I'm sorry. Rebels is forgettable. But from what but going back to my story point, I'm taking a cue from an old EU character of Kukruk. Kukruk is a weird creature Jedi, and basically he, after the whole EU, everything just fell apart and everything, he basically took himself, he went into hibernation, he woke up sometime later, he just taught his own base crew, and he's just enduring. He's trying to survive onto his own as much as he truly can, because that's all really can do. Because in the face of everything, that's realistically all he can really do. Just be patient and hope for the best, because that's what Luke would do. And when the time comes, and if any time in the future may come in of my very own, if I ever have kids, I will show them the true Star Wars, not Disney. I'm sorry. But yeah, until then, thank you very much for watching, everyone. This has been my own personal love and inspiration, and what I think is really good of how the Star Wars is able to explore it and really create it into something unique and fabulous into his own. From what was a very just drop into the middle of something of the original New Hope, which I have the poster of right here. It's now in lore, the Dark Times era, an era comparable to something to our own world of our very own history of World War II, or the Dark Times of a very, like bubonic plague in Europe back in the 14th century, or how it ties and parallels it and does it in very smart and meaningful ways. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of Star Wars. It's able to do that. It's able to take something that depressing and dreary and take it, or to have something that's exploratively fun, like something that feels like it could appeal to a teenager range of people, like the X-Wing series, which is great, or something for a younger series, for a younger generation, which is a really interesting point I want to bring up here. It's forever daunting me, or really weird to me, how Star Wars wants to give shows on Disney about Star Wars, the Clone Wars and Rebels, which are a time during a bloody friggin' war and the oppressive dark times when the Empire was persecuting, hunting, and KIA Jedi. I don't understand why they want to take those into shows, that era, and make it into a TV show on Disney XD. And they will show it to you from back in times of 2011 and 2015 and times like that. And I'm just like, you took the great tapestry of the old EU and you're making it into something that it's not. I don't understand why they want to do that in that aspect. They should have done that for the Jedi Quest era, or the Jedi Quest books, or the Jedi Apprentice books, where you focus on Apprentice, Kenobi and Skywalker, on Jedi Master Kenobi and Apprentice and Anakin as Apprentice, or the Jedi Apprentice books where had Master Qui-Gon and Kenobi as a Padawan. I don't understand that. Disney and everything within the new banner since 2014 and on has done nothing but play it safe. It took the King Cobra of the old EU and sold it as a basic garden snake. And for me, it's just lost all potency. And anytime it does give it something meaningful and impactful and good, like Jedi Fallen Order or Mandalorian Season 1 and 2, which basically, feel like Sergio Leone westerns more than which I do think is a good idea, or even Andor, which I wish was now a part of the OEU. Well, that's the thing about it. I don't think it deserves it. I don't think that the current Star Wars deserves this new highlights. I mean, they're good. I will undeniably take them, but none of them will compare to something like Shatterpoint, or Natural Republic, or the old 2003 to 2005 Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars miniseries. Because in my view, That's clearly the best TV Star Wars has done, rather Star Wars Entertainment, rather than movies or video games or books. Movies wise, that show wins, and that series takes the freaking crown. It just doesn't compare. And that's my takeaway, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. As always, till then, cheers. I realize now this video's gone almost to 30 minutes. Holy crap. Till then, thank you very much for watching. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. And as always, everyone, thank you very much, and may the force be with you all. Always.